glad you're joining me again. We're going to be making more cut paper stories, and we're thinking about how an artist can tell a story with a picture made of simple cut paper shapes, and how the choices we make about shape, color, size, and space can really affect and change the meaning of our story. It's okay to not have an idea for a story before you start. You can get started making some shapes and playing around with them, and the story can come to you while you're making your art. We're going to need everything in our art kit bags today. All the papers can be used, the scissors, and the glue stick. To get your storytelling ideas warmed up, let's look at some examples of some cut paper pictures where the shapes show a place or a setting where a story could happen, and there might be an interesting object to give you an idea too. What can you imagine a story could be with each of these pictures if you put some characters in them? Here's another one. Look closely at the shapes. Do you think this setting is indoors or outdoors? And what do you see that makes you say that? What could be happening in this story? Pause on the pictures as long as you'd like to imagine a story for each of them. Okay, it's time to create. We're going to start with you making a setting for your story. You'll need to take any of the large pieces that are still left in your bag and decide on one of those for your background. Remember, this can determine the time of day. Then you're going to find the black papers that are inside your bag, and we're going to use these for cutting shapes that will make a setting. And let's take a look at different ways we can cut shapes to show indoor settings or outdoor settings. You've probably been getting ideas from all the samples that you've seen of the kind of settings you could make for your picture. Let's think a little bit about cutting, how that makes a difference. If I make a curve cut, kind of a wobbly cut, it makes it look more like I'm in a natural setting or outdoors. If I create an organic shape, kind of wobbly, again, it looks like it's something out in nature. If you want to make a circle or a roundish shape, one way is to take a rectangle or a square piece of paper and kind of round off the corners with your scissors. Trees can be either a long rectangle, it's like a trunk, or you can create triangles. If you want to cut a triangle, you can take a rectangle or a square and cut it diagonally from corner to corner. So more irregular, curved, or organic shapes make us feel like these are pieces of a setting outside or in nature. Shapes with straight edges look like they're indoors or in a town. They're things made by humans. Rectangles could be buildings. Rectangles could be tables. Straight edge shapes could be doors. You can make ramps or bridges or ladders. Now it's time for you to start cutting for your setting. You're going to have your background paper that you've chosen. Cut 2 or 3 pieces of black paper to create your setting. You may want to ask yourself, do I want my picture to be indoors or outside? That's a good question to ask to start figuring out what you're going to cut. Once you've cut several pieces to get you started with a setting, place them on your background paper, but don't glue them down yet. you're going to want to be able to move them around. Pause the video and cut shapes out of black paper to create the setting or place for your story. Let's think about ways to make characters. Last week, we used rectangles of different sizes, and we took squares and rounded the corners of those squares out to make a circle-ish shape, which works for a head. But we can make characters out of different shapes too. A character could simply be a small triangle, or we can make more triangular shapes from our colored strips for characters. We can use color to show connections. We can do characters that are made out of more kind of blobby shapes, more rounded corners, and we can use size to show relationships. You can cut strips from other papers in your bag to make more characters. Turning a rectangle on its side and moving the head around in space suddenly turns a person into an animal. Adding some very simple detail is sometimes just what these characters need. Add arms and legs to characters only if they really need it to tell the story. Pause the video to cut one or more characters for your story. Adding some simple objects and little details to characters can be a really good way to give us clues about what's happening in your story. And if those objects are a bright color, it will help us notice them. You can also make connections by making objects and details the same color. Look at the picture behind me. This character is holding an object. It's a fish, and it's bright orange, so it helps you notice it. There are other things that are orange in this picture too that I've added for details that give you clues about my story. Notice the polar bear also has an orange eye, and there's an orange window in that house over there. So this is a clue that this polar bear might be eyeing this fish, and the person holding the fish is really thinking about that cozy window in that house over there. Move your pieces around and make changes. Show us a moment in your story when something's about to happen or there's a problem. Add any details or objects that will give us clues about what's going on or what's going to happen next. And then glue your pieces down with your glue stick. Pause the video to finish your picture and glue the pieces to your background. Your cut paper story is going to make for some really interesting writing. Practice first by just telling your story. Describe your picture and everything in it and what moment that is in the story, what's happening in that picture. And then tell what could have happened before that to lead up to that moment and what's going to happen after. And then write your story down. This is our last art lesson for a while, but I hope you will keep choosing to make art yourself at home. You have art materials left over from our art kits and lots of ideas. You could make more superpowered characters and write more comics, or draw in your sketchbook. Don't forget those junk puppets. The winter break would be a great time to make more junk puppets and do performances. You could make more cut paper stories and turn them into cards or gifts. You can make art with your family members at home. What kind of art does your family make? Happy art making, artists, and Gunesh Jish for spending this time with me.